The timer stopped at 4 minutes and 21.3 seconds, and the entire coastal course seemed to hold its breath beneath the cold Pacific rain. Water ran off the steel monkey bars, collected along the rubber mats, and trembled in small silver beads on the timing plate at Gate 3. Commander Dorian Voss looked at the number, then at the young operator bent over with his hands on his knees, then at the quiet woman standing beside the maintenance rail with a visitor badge clipped to her gray field jacket. That is what close looks like. The course stretched behind him like a wet machine built to punish hesitation. Rope wall, low crawl, cargo net, balance beam over a tidal channel, and the final sprint lane painted in fading white lines. The record board above the control shack still showed the old mark in block letters, for minutes and 19.6 seconds, set 40 years earlier and treated on base like weathered scripture. Beside it hung a temporary banner for next week's anniversary demonstration, where donors, command staff, and the Coastal Course Renewal Board were scheduled to watch Voss present the obstacle course as a model of proven legacy and modern readiness. A clean record, an unbroken record, meant more than pride. It meant the renovation package he had pushed for 18 months would leave the room untouched. Course record remains untouched. A few men gave the kind of short laugh that was not meant to be cruel enough to report, only sharp enough to place her where Voss wanted her. Evelyn Rourke had not spoken since arriving with the civilian safety team. Not when the petty officers ignored her, not when a lieutenant asked if she needed help finding the observation tent, and not when Voss made a show of checking her visitor pass twice. She did not look at their faces. She watched the puddle on Gate 3 ripple twice after the runner had already cleared it, watched the left anchor cable twitch late, and heard the timing relay click with the faint delay of a door latch closing after the frame had moved. The rain made every surface speak if someone knew how to listen through their feet. Gate 3 is late under load, she said. Voss turned his head slowly, as if a chair had offered an opinion. His hair was silver at the temples, his uniform exact, his voice polished by years of being obeyed before he finished a sentence. Behind him, the course technicians kept their eyes on the tablet, not on the woman who had just questioned the board that had survived storms, inspections, and 4 decades of men trying to put their names above 4 minutes and 19.6 seconds. Late, Voss repeated. Evelyn nodded once. She pointed neither at the timer nor at the operator. Her gaze stayed low, on the steel plate, where rainwater still trembled in a pattern that did not match the wind. Not broken. Late. The distinction irritated him more than an accusation would have. Voss stepped close enough for the others to understand that the conversation was now public property, then glanced at her borrowed clipboard, as if it explained everything about her value. Ms. Rourke, this course has broken better athletes than the inspection office has ever sent us. Evelyn accepted the insult without changing expression. The operator at the finish line straightened, embarrassed for her, while one of the younger men shifted his weight and made the old boards under lane 6 answer with a hollow, delayed shiver. Evelyn heard it. Voss heard only silence. Mind if I try? She asked, and that was when the laughter stopped being casual. Voss did not answer her at once. He turned the request into procedure, which was colder than refusing it. He told Chief Petty Officer Halden to log Evelyn Rourke as a non-rated visitor, not a candidate, not an evaluator, and certainly not a course participant of record. The rain had dropped the morning temperature to 46 degrees, and the tide channel under the balance span was pushing brackish water against the pilings with a dull, steady knock every 6 seconds. Put her in lane 6. Halden hesitated for half a beat, just long enough for Evelyn to notice that the order bothered him. Lane 6 ran closest to the old pier face, where spray made the first 20 yards slick and the steel deck returned a slightly different note underweight. Voss added that she could use the spare boots from the equipment cage, size 8.5, standard issue, no custom sole inserts, no gloves beyond the thin inspection pair already in her pocket. It was not framed as punishment. It was framed as fairness, which made the watching men accept it more easily. The choice also protected him. If Evelyn failed, she would be a civilian who had overestimated herself in borrowed boots. If she noticed anything, he could call it outside interference before the anniversary board ever heard the word audit. Voss had spent the last quarter tying his name to the course renewal proposal, file CRB 77, and every clean qualification run helped keep that proposal looking less like a risk and more like a tradition worth funding. Evelyn signed the waiver on a damp clipboard, then handed it back without asking for a different lane. The petty officer beside the timing console entered her name incorrectly as E. Rourke, file tag VS. 12, start window 8 hours and 42 minutes, environmental note. Rain, crosswind 11 knots, deck wet. Evelyn corrected only the name, not the tone. Rourke, she said. A young lieutenant offered her a helmet with the faintly generous expression of a man trying not to look amused. She checked the chin strap, pressed 2 fingers against the left buckle, and felt the small plastic clip stick before releasing. She did not complain. Instead, she laid the helmet on the rail, took another one from the lower rack, and tested it once. Holden saw that. Voss did too, but read it as fussiness. The timing technician ran a pre-check across the gates. Gate 1 green, Gate 2 green, Gate 3 green, Gate 4 green, final beam green. On the tablet, the vibration monitor showed a narrow pulse between 12 and 14 hertz when a maintenance cart rolled over the third plate. But the alert band stayed yellow, not red. Someone had widened the tolerance window months ago. Evelyn could see it in the way the graph accepted the tremor as normal even after the pier rail answered out of phase. You want a safety inspection? Inspect from the side, Voss said, loud enough for the line to hear. Evelyn placed one borrowed boot on the start mat and shifted her weight once. The sole was loose at the heel. The deck under her did not feel dangerous yet, only dishonest, as if the course were reporting one truth upward to the timer and another downward through the steel. She looked at the old record board again. For minutes and 19.6 seconds, painted beneath a faded date from 40 years earlier, preserved with the reverence of something no one wanted measured too closely. At 8 hours 43 minutes and 17 seconds, the start light armed. Holden lifted his hand, then lowered it when Voss stepped beside him and said the run would be unofficial unless she completed every obstacle inside safety margins. Evelyn did not object. She rolled her shoulders once, listened to the rain tick across Gate 3, and realized the real test was no longer whether she could run the course, but whether the course would be allowed to tell the truth when she did. The start light stayed armed for 11 seconds before Evelyn lifted one hand. Not high, not dramatic, just enough for Holden to hold the clock. A bead of rain slid down the face of the console and broke over the corner of the tablet, smearing the vibration graph into a gray line before the technician wiped it clean with his sleeve. The course kept knocking beneath them in its uneven rhythm, tied against pier, wind through cable, water on rubber, steel returning a note it should not have returned. Run a loaded pass first. Voss looked at her as if she had requested ceremony instead of verification. Evelyn stepped back from the mat and pointed with 2 fingers toward Gate 3, where the yellow band on the monitor pulsed again at 13.6 hertz when a gust pushed the balance span sideways. She did not say the course was unsafe. She said the cleaner thing, the harder thing to dismiss later. The delay will show under moving weight, not static check. The timing technician, a thin civilian contractor named Pell, ran a diagnostic from the console and shook his head after 12 seconds. Gate 3 answered within the accepted window, plus 0.04, plus 0.06, plus 0.05. The numbers look harmless because the test applied no moving load and no lateral shift from lane 6. Voss spread one hand toward the tablet as if the matter had been put into evidence and buried. Holden, still holding the start control, glanced at Evelyn's boots, then at the damp shine on the third plate. "Commander, we can put a cart across it." Voss declined without turning. He ordered candidate Mercer, 191 pounds before gear, to run the first 2 gates as a pace reference with a 38-pound training pack and no full course completion. It sounded reasonable, controlled, and official enough that nobody argued. Evelyn watched Mercer step on a lane 4, not lane 6, and she saw the first problem immediately. The pack weight would create load, but the lane would not recreate the pier edge vibration she had felt through the borrowed boot. The result would almost prove her wrong. At 8 hours 46 minutes and 2 seconds, Mercer crossed Gate 1 clean. At 8 hours 46 minutes and 19 seconds, he struck Gate 2 clean. At 8 hours 46 minutes and 31 seconds, he hit Gate 3, and the tablet showed a tiny delay, plus 0.11 seconds, still inside the widened tolerance band. Voss tilted his head toward Evelyn. "That is why we use instruments." Evelyn accepted the point because part of it was true. The instrument had recorded a delay. It simply had not been forced to admit what the delay meant. She asked Pell when the tolerance window had last been changed. Pell tapped through the settings and found the administrative note faster than he wanted to. Course TG3/calibration profile revised, 17 March, 2210, authorization DV4. The older profile was not visible from the run screen. Voss said the revision was routine after winter corrosion. Evelyn looked toward the low camera mounted beneath the pier rail, its lens dotted with salt and rain. Then the maintenance log will match. That was the moment Voss's expression tightened. Not enough for the candidates to read, but enough for Halden to stop pretending this was only about a visitor being careful. Voss ordered the run sequence resumed before anyone could ask why a routine timing revision had been entered at 22:10 after the course had officially closed, and Evelyn returned to the start mat knowing the board was not the only thing on that course built to protect an old number. Voss resumed the sequence at 8 hours and 49 minutes and changed the pace order from demonstration runs to score qualification, which made the course feel less like wet steel and more like a clock somebody had wound too tightly. The first two candidates moved cleanly through Lane 4 and Lane 5, both far from the pier edge, both heavy enough to make the plates answer, but not heavy enough to force the old frame to confess. Halden kept the separation at 18 yards, then 14, then 12 when Voss told him they were losing the morning tide window. The tide had risen another 6 inches against the pilings, and the temperature had fallen to 45 degrees, cold enough that every wet grip took an extra fraction from the hands before the mind admitted it. Keep them moving. Candidate Mercer returned to Lane 6 with the same 38-pound pack, this time ordered to complete the full course. A second candidate, Ortiz, was staged behind him with a lighter pack and a faster start cadence. Evelyn stood beside the rail with her borrowed helmet under one arm, no longer at the start mat because Voss had used procedure to move her out of the sequence. That should have made her irrelevant. Instead, it gave her the angle she needed. At 8 hours, 50 minutes and 27 seconds, Mercer crossed Gate 1. At 8 hours, 50 minutes and 44 seconds, he cleared Gate 2. When his right boot hit Gate 3, the pier answered below the deck before the timer answered above it. A low tremor around 14.2 hertz, then a late click, then the tablet flashed green, as if the plate had finished speaking before the steel had stopped moving. The public board showed only plus 0.07. Pell's raw trace, visible for 1 second before the display refreshed, showed plus 0.29 under moving load. Evelyn saw Halden's thumb tighten on the control. He had seen it too. Mercer pushed toward the balance span, but the system had already released the next course clearance tone early enough for Ortiz to step forward. It was not a catastrophe yet. It was the kind of small administrative error that becomes a physical one when everyone trusts the board more than the structure beneath it. Ortiz entered the first 10 yards while Mercer was still adjusting at the cargo net, closing the safe gap to less than 7 yards where the posted minimum was 12. Halden called for a hold. Voss overrode him with 2 words, "Run it." Evelyn moved before the command had finished echoing off the control shack. She did not sprint onto the course or make herself a spectacle. She stepped to the side rail, struck the lower support once with the heel of her palm, and felt the vibration return through the metal with the same delayed stutter she had heard in the rain. Then she called out one clean instruction, not to Voss, but to Mercer. "Left rail. Wait 1 beat." Mercer hesitated, irritated but trained enough to obey a voice that sounded certain. Ortiz slowed on instinct when Halden finally hit the manual hold. The clearance tone died halfway through its chirp. Nothing dramatic happened, and that was the point. The danger passed in the narrow space where bad decisions usually pretend they were harmless. The freeze frame on the secondary monitor held at 8 hours, 51 minutes, and 12 seconds, with Mercer's split projected at 412 if the corrupted clearance sequence remained active. Evelyn looked at that projection once, then at the old record board, and understood what Voss had been protecting was not merely a number from 40 years ago, but a system that could make any inconvenient number disappear. Voss tried to convert the hold into a clerical correction before anyone could name it as a near miss. He told Pell to reset the sequence, mark the clearance tone as operator delay, and remove the projected 412 from the secondary monitor because projected splits were not official. Halden did not move at first. He looked at the frozen timestamp, 8 hours, 51 minutes, and 12 seconds. Then at the safety margin placard bolted beside the control shack. Minimum separation, 12 yards. Wet deck advisory, 15 yards recommended. The distance between Mercer and Ortiz had been 6.8 yards when the tone cut out. Manual hold was proper, Halden said. Voss turned on him with a command voice, not loud, but honed to make a subordinate feel the weight of every person watching. Your opinion is logged. Evelyn had already stepped away from the side rail and placed the borrowed helmet back on her head. Rain ticked against the shell in a dry, plastic rhythm, different from the lower steel pulse beneath lane 6. She adjusted the loose right boot by tightening the lace one eyelet higher, not because it fixed the heel, but because it made the slip predictable. Run the verification under the same lane conditions, she said. This time she did not ask permission from Voss. She looked at Halden, because Halden had the start control, and because the course had already shown who was still listening to the wrong thing. Pell opened a new file reluctantly. Run VS, 12B, start window 8 hours and 54 minutes, lane 6, wet deck, wind 12 knots, gate telemetry recording raw trace. Voss objected that a visitor could not set course record status. Halden answered with procedure. A safety verification run could be recorded as environmental data, not qualification. It was enough. At 8 hours, 54 minutes and 19 seconds, Evelyn stepped onto the start mat. The first light washed green across her boots. She did not explode forward. She left clean, compact, and almost unimpressive for the first 3 seconds, which made the men used to raw speed underestimate what they were seeing. Gate 1 registered at 18.4 seconds. Gate 2 took her at 47.9 seconds. At the low crawl, she let her left shoulder carry weight across the wet rubber instead of fighting for height, losing no visible time, but preserving enough breath to make the rope wall look ordinary. The course did not become easy. The borrowed boot slipped twice, once on the pier edge paint and once on the 4th rung below the cargo net, and the second slip cost her nearly half a second. Evelyn corrected without drama. Not perfectly, just fast enough that the mistake stayed human. At gate 3, she changed nothing anyone could copy from the rail. It was less technique than listening. Her right foot landed where the steel returned clean. Her left crossed before the late tremor climbed through the plate, and the raw telemetry spiked at 14.1 Hz without corrupting the clearance. Pell's screen captured it. Public delay plus 0.03. Raw vibration peak beyond old profile. No sequence fault. Halden's jaw set. Voss stopped watching Evelyn and started watching the tablet. She cleared the balance span with 8 yards of empty space behind her because Halden had locked the start order himself. At the final sprint, rain flattened her jacket against her shoulders, and the record board flickered once as if reluctant to accept a new century. The timer stopped at 4 minutes and 12 seconds. For a moment, the number looked too plain to be historic. Then Pell tried to save the file, and the system asked for Commander Dorian Voss's authorization to overwrite the run. Pell's cursor hovered over the authorization prompt as if the screen itself had become an order he did not want to obey. The timer still showed 4 minutes and 12 seconds on the public board, bright white against the rain-dark control shack, but the save window beneath it carried a different truth. Overwrite protected record chain, authorization required, DV4. Voss stepped toward the console and told Pell to cancel the write. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Every person on that wet pier understood that a commander's comm could be heavier than shouting. Environmental data only, Voss said. No record status. Evelyn was breathing hard now, and that helped more than it weakened her. It made the run real. Water dripped from her sleeves. The borrowed boot had rubbed a raw line above her heel, and her hands rested on her knees for exactly 3 breaths before she straightened. She did not ask Pell to disobey. She asked him to export the raw telemetry to the safety file already opened under run ACE 12B. Voss said that file belonged to course administration. Halden corrected him quietly. Safety verification data could not be deleted once a manual hold had been logged inside a separation breach. The phrase changed the air around the console. Separation breach was not dramatic language. It was worse. It was procedural language. Pell opened the file tree with a reluctant tap and found 3 linked entries. Run, VS, 12B, hold, 08, to 51 to 12, and course. TG3 calibration profile DV4. The March 17th revision sat behind them like a locked door someone had forgotten to repaint. Evelyn pointed at the profile history, not at Voss. Show the prior band. Pell entered read-only mode. The old tolerance appeared in gray. Raw vibration alert above 11.8 Hz under moving load. The current profile, signed at 2210, allowed alerts only above 15.6 Hz and suppressed public delay flagged below plus 0.30 seconds. Gate 3 had just peaked at 14.1 Hz during Evelyn's run. Mercer's near miss had shown plus 0.29. Both numbers had been designed to disappear. Voss called it corrosion compensation, but his answer arrived too quickly before Pell had opened the maintenance notes. Halden noticed that. So did Ortiz, still standing near the first marker with his pack straps hanging loose. Pell scrolled down to the maintenance log from the same night. Pier frame resonance check incomplete, lower camera offline, pending lens cleaning, gate 3 field adjustment deferred. Then came a later note, entered 9 minutes after the calibration change. Record board integrity preserved for anniversary event. No one had written a confession. They had written something smaller and more useful, a sentence that did not belong in a safety system. 2 lines below it, a procurement tag appeared in the maintenance note. CRB 77/renewal presentation pending. Evelyn did not need to explain the connection. A widened tolerance window, a protected record chain, and a renewal package tied to Voss's name formed a cleaner motive than anger ever could. Evelyn asked for the low peer camera. Pell said it had been offline. Halden reached under the console and pulled the local media tray, the kind used when network sync failed in bad weather. It was not convenient evidence. It was neglected evidence, salt-stained and labeled CM. LP6/local buffer/March 17th. The file opened with missing frames and water-blurred edges, but it showed the maintenance cart crossing lane 6 after closure, the plate dipping late, and Voss standing beside the technician while the tolerance window changed on the tablet. The timestamp read 22 hours, 13 minutes, and 44 seconds. Voss reached for the console, then stopped when Halden placed one hand over the media tray. Evelyn said nothing about guilt. She only looked at the public board, where 4 minutes and 12 seconds still glowed above the course Voss had tried to teach to lie. By 9:37, the course classroom had become a command safety review, not because anyone had planned one, but because the system had produced too many numbered facts to leave outside in the rain. The whiteboard still carried yesterday's tide chart and a half-erased equipment roster, but Halden had taped a temporary evidence strip across the media tray and written CST 09-37/CM, LP6/local buffer in black marker. Pell sat at the front table with both hands flat beside the keyboard, as though touching nothing would keep him from being accused of touching the wrong thing. Voss stood near the door, close enough to leave, too senior to appear as if he wanted to. The first item was simple. Manual hold, 08 to 51 to 12, separation recorded at 6.8 yard against a posted wet deck recommendation of 15 yards. The second was uglier. Gate 3 raw delay plus 0.29 seconds during Mercer's loaded pass, hidden under a public tolerance ceiling of plus 0.30. The third made the room administrative instead of argumentative. Calibration profile DV4 entered March 17th at 22:10 after the course had been marked closed at 21:40. Read the timestamps in order, Evelyn said. She had been given a dry fleece that did not fit her shoulders, and the borrowed boots sat under her chair with rainwater pooled around the soles. No one had asked her to sit at the head of the table. She had chosen a side seat near the wall, where she could see the projector and the floor both. Halden read the entries himself, voice even, one line at a time. Resonance check incomplete, lower camera sync failed, tolerance profile adjusted, record board integrity preserved for anniversary event. Voss interrupted on the last phrase, calling it poor wording from a tired technician. Captain Merritt Dane, the base safety officer, did not look impressed or offended. He looked like a man subtracting excuses from a procedure. He asked who authorized DV4. Pell opened the signature field. Dorian Voss/admin override/22 hours, 10 minutes, and 33 seconds. The procurement liaison's name appeared in the copied distribution field, not as an approver, but as a recipient for the course readiness summary. That mattered. It meant DV, for it had not been buried in a maintenance corner. It had been folded into the story Voss intended to sell upstairs. Dane did not accuse him of fraud. He simply marked the distribution field, then underlined CRB 77 once. Voss shifted to the only ground left, arguing that Evelyn's 4 minutes and 12 seconds could not stand because she had entered as VS 12, not as a registered operator or candidate. Captain Dane asked whether the timing chain had recorded a completed course. Pell answered yes. He asked whether all obstacles were cleared within posted safety margins. Halden answered yes. He asked whether raw telemetry contradicted the public time. Pell swallowed once and answered no. At 9:52, Dane ordered the record board frozen. Gate 3 locked out pending structural audit. Voss's course administration credentials suspended under Safety Review Code SR 41C and CRB 77 held from presentation until procurement could review the altered calibration chain. The words had no theater in them. That made them final. Only then did Dane ask Evelyn why a civilian visitor had recognized a vibration profile his own people had missed. She reached into the inner pocket of the damp gray jacket and placed a narrow plastic credential on the table, face down first, then turned it over with 2 fingers. The name read Evelyn Rourke. The program field read Tide Latch / Structural Response Assessment. There was no rank on the card, only a clearance stripe and a file number, TR 6-412. Dane studied it for 3 seconds longer than politeness required. Voss studied it, as if it had been placed there to accuse him personally. Evelyn did not help either man with an explanation. Outside, through the rain-streaked classroom window, the record board remained lit but locked, unable to erase 4 minutes and 12 seconds, and unable yet to admit what it meant. At 10:18, Captain Dane signed a first order without ceremony. Gate 3 locked out, all qualification runs suspended, DV, for removed from active control, CRB 77 frozen pending procurement review, and Commander Dorian Voss relieved of course administration under Safety Review Code SR 41C. The language was plain enough to fit on one page and heavy enough to end the version of the future Voss had been building around that record. Voss did not argue after the second signature, because argument had nowhere left to stand. The chain was too clean. 22 hours 10 minutes and 33 seconds authorization. 22 hours, 13 minutes, and 44 seconds camera buffer. Widened vibration tolerance. Suppressed delay flags. Manual hold at 8 hours, 51 minutes, and 12 seconds. CRB 77 tied to the renewal presentation, and Evelyn Rourke's completed verification run at 4 minutes and 12 seconds. By 10:41, Pell had exported the raw telemetry under custody label SR 41C TG3, and Halden had countersigned the media tray seal. Nobody called it revenge. Nobody needed to. The process took what Voss had protected and removed his hands from it piece by piece. Outside, the rain thinned to a cold mist over the course, leaving the steel rails bright and wet. The record board stayed frozen until the audit officer arrived, then changed only one line. Course record, 4 minutes and 12 seconds. Evelyn Rourke, verified pending structural audit. For 40 years, 4 minutes and 19.6 seconds had sat there like a warning against trying. Now the old number remained in the archive, not erased, but corrected by something quieter than pride. Evelyn watched the update from the classroom doorway, with her visitor badge already unclipped. Dane asked whether she wanted her Tide Latch file attached to the public training note. She said no. The run data was enough. Halden returned the borrowed boots in a plastic bin, noticed the rubbed heel, and said he would add boot condition variants to the environmental note. Evelyn gave him the smallest nod of the morning. It was not praise. It was acknowledgement that someone had learned to measure the right thing. Voss passed her once in the corridor, escorted by an administrative officer carrying the access tablet he no longer controlled. His face held no collapse, only the hard vacancy of a man discovering that rank could open doors but could not rewrite timestamps. Evelyn did not stop him. She walked back to the pier rail, placed the gray visitor pass beside the start console, and left one sentence on the back of the waiver form. Mind if I try? Below it, in Halden's neat block print, Someone had added the answer the board could no longer hide. For minutes and 12 seconds. If quiet discipline means more to you than loud glory, please like and subscribe. This story is a fictional military narrative created for entertainment purposes. Any resemblance to real events is purely coincidental.